But hey, it's all right. I won't forget you. Not until we can meet again. I swear it.
These are the final words spoken in Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Words from loved ones worlds apart. A subtle message to the players from the developers thanking them for playing. The ending of Xenoblade 3 is distinct in the Xenoblade series, whereas 1 and 2 ended off on joyful and hopeful notes. Xenoblade 3 was far more bittersweet. Noah, Mio, and the rest of Autobotters did it. They took the fight to Mobius and destroyed the unjust world. But as a direct result of their actions and the choices they continued to make, Origin would activate, the worlds would collide, destroy each other, and then they would be remade from light by a united Origin, sending them both back on their way. The memories of Ionios gone forever. But in the words of the Arbiter from Halo 3, were it so easy. For Xenoblade 3 does not have the clear-cut book close moment 1 and 2 possessed. Au contraire, mon ami. For we had a post-credits scene depicting life after Ionios. Noah, Lance, Uni, and Urine reunited as kids right where they were before Origin was activated but a moment ago, unaware of the lifetime they had spent in the Endless Now. And while Noah could have ran off with his friends in the story end, that's not what happened, is it? Noah heard an all-too-familiar song, as if washing over him like a wave of memory. The Off-Seeing song. He knows that song well. Why does he know it? Why does he even know it in the first place? And curious Noah wanders off in search of its source, and vanishes from thin air, not hiding amongst the crowd, just gone. Vanished. Hasta la vista. In a moment, Noah has vanished, and the ramifications of this event are not explained or elaborated on so far. And we could sit back patiently waiting for any possible explanation that could come. But you are on my channel, and where's the fun in that? Waiting? You know what? Before we even get a second trailer for 3's DLC story, I'm calling my shot. My definitive theory for the events of not only Xenoblade Chronicles 3's DLC, but also possibly Xenoblade Chronicles 4, including gameplay mechanics, the world, and possibly the final frames of Xenoblade 4. I'm going for broke. I'm going for an old, reliable, the all-in. I'm not just calling game, I'm calling net, and I'm ordering the poster while the ball is in the air. Let's have way too much confidence in ourselves and predict the future of Xenoblade Chronicles. Alright, so brief recap of what we know so far. The DLC has at least 3 things going for it. At least one scene with Rex before losing an eye, as shown in the Founders Room. We also have Shulk in that scene before losing an arm, also seen in the Founders Room. And Alvis with what appears to be Zanza's Monado 1 as well as Zanza's wings in front of what looks like a fog gate from Future Connected, and they're all just standing or flying on top of what looks like a metal floor, possibly from Origin itself, though it could be somewhere else. And Rex says, "He's a heartless machine!" Which may or may not come from that scene since we don't see him saying it. So that audio could have come from another scene and they're just trying to misdirect us here. We know that nothing is getting through to whom we assume is Alvis. Rex has what looks like Pyra and Mithra's Aegis swords with different hilts, while Shulk has Monado Rex from Future Connected. I think these might just be their blade weapons for Ionios. Someone commented on one of my videos with that idea a while ago, like months ago, and I tend to agree. Either that or Shulk just made them in Ionios. We get a drone shot of Bionis Leg Zone from Xenoblade 1, which appears to be the island in the northwestern part of Ionios that we just never went to, judging from the Moradane hand in the distance and comparing other landmarks. We then get another scene where who we believe is Vandam from the Founders Room says, "Killing Granddad wasn't enough for you," as he's about to interlink end of the trailer. We got another photo from the DLC page in-game that shows Vandam with his Nintendo Power Glove as well. And we know from the Founders Room that he's a martial artist. So assuming the events of the Founders Room will happen in the DLC, what do we know or expect? Well, we know that a cure to the 10-term limit for Agnes and Kevis will be uncovered as stated in the House Rhodes and House Ortiz statues. House Rhodes and House Ortiz meet in a battle between Agnes and Kevis, where the other founders meet them as well and break them out of the cycle, or at least convince them to join up with the founders. House Cassini and House Reed's founders aren't shown, and they are replaced with statues of Rex and Shulk respectively, but both with an injury. As I mentioned before, Rex loses an eye with a vertical scar, and Shulk loses his right arm. Funnily enough, Shulk's statue specifically mentions that the founder of House Reed is not related to him by bonds of blood, which is a weird descriptor when you think about it. But, in the context of the other founders' statues as well, and especially the description in Rex's, it might be hinting at the relationship between Cassini and Rex, since that statue, which already mentioned House Reed earlier in the description, does not specify whether or not Cassini and Rex are related by bonds of blood, so family. And it's odd how Rhodes and Ortiz both mention that they both managed to reach 80 or 80 years plus for their lives, but Rex and Shulk just don't mention their relationship to the founder outside of being mentors. It makes me think that the founder of House Cassini could be one of Rex's kids, as shown in the final photo from the ending. Possibly either Mithra or Pyrrhus, since M is Mobius by this point. I'm leaning towards the Cassini founder being one of Rex's kids myself. I guess there's some interpretation you could do, that since Mithra and Pyrrha are blades, they should technically be members of Agnes as well, if that's how that works. So it could be it's just one of them who has no knowledge of Rex at this point, so Rex mentors them. I think it's more likely it's one of his kids, though. Okay, last two founders. One is Vandam, we'll get to him, but the other is House Doyle, a cat girl on the Kevis side of the room, by the way. Wink wink. Which also mentions that she is most likely a sibling to Vandam, because there aren't any cat girls from Kevis side, because they come from Gormott in Ulrest, which would be Agnes. So why is she on the Kevis side? Well, her description mentions that she is most likely a sibling to Vandam. And if we assume Vandam is the child or grandchild of Noah and Mio, then it's possible that they each inherited one of the irises. So Doyle got Noah's and Vandam got Mio's. Or they have both, which I think is kind of unlikely because it states that she fought alongside the founder of Vandam, then, who was the elder of the two, and brought the power of Ouroboros to completion. This reads to me as Interlink, so I imagine at some point in the DLC, Doyle and Vandam will interlink and beat N with their interlink. In fact, let's expand on this. Over to the Vandam statue. The founder realized fully the power of Ouroboros, heretofore limited, and fought against N, ousting him. Once victorious, he gathered the old city's people, scattered to the winds, and re-established the city. With the city restored, he left its government in the hands of the founder of Doyle, and departed on a lonely expedition. No records exist of his fate thereafter. Heirs of Vandam's lineage only returned to the new city several centuries later. Oral tradition has it that the founder was master of the classical art of fist fighting, and the scions of House Vandam carry on the custom to this day. Cough cough Gondor. So I imagine the limited power of Ouroboros is either a partial interlink, or just some kind of buff. Eventually, with Doyle, they managed to interlink, beat the tar out of N, and I imagine that by doing so permanently took away his ability to enter his Mobius form, which would explain why he just never showed in the base game if he had one at all. So knowing what we know, what has to happen or at least be referenced? Ortiz and Rhodes must fight, they must meet up with the other founders, stop fighting and join the founders, and then find a way out of the 10-term limit. Rex and Shulk must sustain injuries in the DLC, since we see them unharmed in the Alvis cutscene from the trailer, but we know they get injured at some point because of the founder statues. Killing Granddad wasn't enough for you, so Vandam's grandfather, whoever that is, or whoever he calls Granddad, must be killed by someone, not necessarily N, though I think it is in reference to N. There's two possibilities here. If Vandam is Noah's son, then it's in reference to Rex, and I imagine in Aeonios, N kills Rex, hence killing Granddad. Could be Azurda since he's called Gramps in Xenoblade 2, but I think that one's a bit of a long shot. But, option number B, if Vandam is Noah's grandkid, then it might just be a miscommunication or a deception, with misunderstanding possibly, where Vandam thinks N is different to Noah, and that N killed Noah, and it'll be revealed to him later on that they are one of the same people. I think both are equally likely, it's just a matter of how they want to go about with this. And if you're wondering about Doyle, if she's Noah's grandkid, just assume the child we see in Xenoblade 3 eventually had two kids, Vandam and Doyle, and if she is Noah's child somehow, then I just imagine there was another cycle after they had the first kid, where Noah and Mio met after Vandam, where they had another kid, that one being Doyle. Also would explain why she's younger. And we know Vandam and Doyle achieve the true power of Ouroboros, I bet on Interlink, and Vandam beats N's butt like a drum. Vandam then pulls an atom and screws off until hundreds of years later, where his descendants return to the city. This lonely expedition, as they call it, could be covered in the game, and if it is, I imagine it'll be hard to predict, since he needs descendants, so he needs some time to make descendants at least. He might be going after Zed by himself, maybe that's possible. Maybe it's just adopted descendants and not necessarily by blood, possible as well. It's really hard to predict this bit. They could pull an Adam, like I said, and just not go into detail about what this means. But here's my main thing. I think we get a body count of old Xenoblade 1 and 2 characters, including Shulk and Rex. I think they both at least, and probably others, will die during the DLC, but I don't think it'll be permanent. I think they'll all come back after the events of the base game, once Origin activates and Ionios has ended. But I think we're absolutely getting a body count, with a lot of character death here. Just it won't be permanent. However, we cut over to Alvis, because Alvis is the curveball here. Because if we look at the series of events the Founders Room showcases, none of that requires Alvis. And you can tell a complete prequel without Alvis. So why the hell is he here? I'm not in the camp of thinking Alvis misinterpreted Shulk's world without God's comment. I think he's being controlled or something, or by someone. Probably Zed. However, there's another theory to that. We'll get into that in a second. He's doing the same face Mithra did when she was overcome with emotion at the end of 2, right before she erased a continent. So either Alvis is overcome with emotion as well, and just went full computer, maybe thinking he failed and caused everyone to be honest and maybe Shulk to die, or he's being controlled by Zed somehow, or, again, we'll get to the other main theory that I have with that. Maybe Alvis was being used to power Origin and Zed got a hold of him that way and now is using him as an enforcer. Slight issue, the Fog Gate. Where the hell did that come from? Can it even happen if it's connected to another world, if this scene takes place in Ionios? Well, if it's not Ionios, how is Shulk and Rex here? Or at least together. So here's my theory. I think this is one of the first scenes, or at least happens extremely early on in the DLC. I also think it's Ionios. I just don't think they'll care that much about having the Fog Gate in Ionios. If this was going to be, or at least trying to explain how it could happen if one world's time is not still, but another's is, I don't think they'll really go into detail about the whole time aspect of it. If this was going to be some kind of grand reveal at the end, they would just not have shown this. And they probably have used another scene of Shulk and Rex to create similar levels of hype. So in my opinion, this has to be early on, where they don't consider this to be a main spoiler, which is the main thing they advertised. I don't see this as like the ending or anything like that. I think Alvis is using the Fog Gate to potentially open up access to the Conduit to gain his Monado powers back, and chooses to visualize them as Zanza's. There's a part of me that wants to say it's actually Zanza controlling Alvis and not Zed, because that's the only story-driven reason I can imagine for Zanza's wings and Monado to be back outside of just a neat reference to Xenoblade 1. And let's expand on that idea, shall we? It could be that Zed was able to draw out Zanza's data from Alvis' core crystal, so it's not really our Zanza, but more like a copy that has overtaken the main server, like a virus. That's probably my best guess as to explaining Alvis right now, and that Zed is the puppet master, or this Alvis will turn into Zed at some point and was Zed all along. When it comes to what will happen with Alvis, I imagine it'll be a struggle for most of the game with trying to free his mind, and then at the very end he'll probably end up sacrificing himself, destroying Zanza's corrupted data inside of him, and giving us the opportunity that we need to lay a smackdown on N, or defeating N will give us the chance to save Alvis so that he can sacrifice himself. But either way, I think Alvis' story ends in a noble sacrifice to destroy Zanza's last remaining bits of data. If you're wondering about what about the data inside of Numa's core crystal, I don't know, cut and paste it or something. Or just render it like inoperable after the events of Xenoblade 2. I think that's how the DLC ends, with the end of Klaus once and for all, wrapping up the Klaus saga, which is what 3 was meant to do, as talked about by Takahashi, which clears the way for future stories, like what I think the epilogue will be. So a brief TLDR for the Alvis theory, I think there's still some bit of Zanza, or at least Zanza data that lives on inside of Alvis' core crystal, which for whatever reason, maybe by Zed, or through a strong emotional pull, or just acts like a virus, that Zanza data overtakes Alvis, controlling him. Once the Fog Gate is established, he's able to get his powers back with the Monado and the Alvis and the Zanza wings, which would explain why it's Zanza's stuff, and not necessarily unique weapons or wings for Alvis, since it's quote-unquote a copy of Zanza in control. I don't think it'll be actually Zanza, I think it'll be like a copy of his data. Like a computer simulation of Zanza, essentially. Acting like a virus. Now, to the epilogue. It's no secret, as I talk about this next theory about every other stream that I do, I think Xenoblade 3's final cutscene, or its first and last ones, will show us the Mio perspective from before and after Ionios. Because I think M will be a major character in the DLC as well, possibly the 7th Founder, we'll get to that. I think M will serve as a source of intel in trying to defeat Alvis and N, and Mobius overall to lay the groundwork for Xenoblade 3. The 7th Founder is up in the air. I think it's going to be either Nia or Mio. I think either are possible. They did put the Ouroboros Stone, which comes from Nia, in place instead of a statue, which could be a giant reference to Nia, since, again, the Ouroboros Stones come from Nia. So, if I wanted to play it safe, I would say Nia. If I wanted to be a little bit dirty, a little bit out there, I would go with Mio. And thinking that was actually found to M the entire time. But now for what I think the epilogue and the prologue bit will be. The first and last cutscenes. The bookends. I think just like how we got the Noah perspective from before and after Ionios from the base game, I think we'll get the Mio perspective in the DLC, showing her with her family, with Rex, Pyra, and Mithra, and possibly Nia, who may be away due to running Origin, and being the queen. And at the very end, as the final cutscene, we'll see Mio reunited with her family after the events of the base game and Ionios. And then, I think the curveball will play. I think she'll hear the off-scene tune just like Noah did, and that one of two things will happen. Either she mirrors Noah, walks off in search of the source, and disappears as well. Or she turns around, and she sees a young Noah and says either one of two things. Who are you? Or, you. I remember you. Fade to black, back to the new main menu, game over. Phew! That was a lot. And there's no shot that I'm going to be able to cover everything that I think will happen in Xenoblade 4 either. So next time, we'll cover the second half of my theory. What the DLC leads to, and where the story goes in its next numbered entry. Because remember, they never said Xenoblade was over. Just the Klaus saga. And in fact, they said from Xenoblade 3 and the DLCs, we'll be able to get some kind of hint as to where the series will go from here. So I'm going to go lay it all on the line and make a prediction off the back of this theory with the assumption that I'm mostly going to be right here today. So stay tuned to probably see me come up with a theory that could age extremely poorly or extremely well. We'll just have to wait and see. So thank you for tuning in. My pleasure making the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. And hit the bell icon to be notified for when I upload in the future. Stay safe, everybody. Have a great day. Leave a comment down below with your wildest, your wackiest fan theory for the events of DLC for Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts and hear your opinions and hear your perspectives. Stay safe, everybody. Have a great day. Go play some video games if you can. And as always, I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody.